Join us for a lively discussion about the A-State community. Each week, we'll meet with a variety of faculty, staff, and students to discuss all things Arkansas State University. Live from the ASU-TV studios in the School of Media and Journalism, this is A-State Connections. And welcome to A-State Connections on KASU and ASU-TV. I'm Jonathan Reeves, News Director with KASU Public Radio and the host of A-State Connections, the radio show on KASU. Agriculture students have the opportunity to be part of the Collegiate Farm Bureau. These students are making an impact in the communities that Arkansas State serves, and we're going to talk about these topics on the show today. Joining me in the studios is Assistant Professor of Agricultural Economics, Dr. Jacob Manlove, and Katie Parker with the A-State Collegiate Farm Bureau. Thanks, both of you, for joining me here on A-State Connections.
Absolutely.
So first, I wanted to get information about, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to Arkansas State. And Dr. Manlove, we'll start with you first.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an assistant professor in the College of Agriculture. I teach specifically agricultural economics. So that ranges from anything from how we market our products that we produce to actually managing an agribusiness firm. In terms of how I kind of came to Arkansas State and what drew me here was really that if you spent any time in Jonesboro and you've driven anywhere, you can't go too far without seeing a bank. And we're kind of the central area for where all of agriculture for the entire Delta kind of occurs. And so it's a unique opportunity to teach inside the classroom and then just open the door and just be surrounded by agriculture basically everywhere we are in the region. You know,
when you talk about like opportunities to be able to have, and I've heard this, go out into the field or field work. I mean, we're not kidding. This literally, it's field work.
Absolutely.
You know? And that. So, Katie, I want to ask about you and tell us about yourself and how you came to Arkansas State.
Well, I am a junior here at A-State. I'm an agriculture business major. I came to A-State because it's one of the few colleges in Arkansas that does offer an agriculture degree. So I wanted to get my degree in ag and then also play softball and be in a sorority. So I could do all three here. So this is where I ended up.
Fantastic. And now, do you come from like a farming family or an agriculture-related family?
I do. I grew up on a farm, and my family still farms. My oldest brother is actually working on taking it over.
Okay, very good. So from the Grand Prairie in the central part of Arkansas, where that is. Very good. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the Collegiate Farm Bureau. And Dr. Manlove, please tell us about this.
Yeah, so Collegiate Farm Bureau really comes from the larger organization of the Arkansas Farm Bureau and then the national organization. So most of the time when you ask somebody kind of what is Farm Bureau, they think of the insurance corporation first because they do sell insurance. They have life insurance policies, and that's one side of the Arkansas Farm Bureau or Farm Bureau in general. The side we work more closely with is the actual advocacy side. So apart from the insurance, there's also a group, and it's a very grassroots organization where we have local communities, local boards, and they go out and they find local issues that affect the economy for farmers, that affect the rural development and just community development overall. And everything, like I said, is very grassroots. Typically what is important to that particular region. And so from that, we have, of course, the Collegiate Farm Bureau as a subset of that.
Right. And so how many students do you have involved in the Collegiate Farm Bureau?
We have roughly 15 to 20 students involved in the organization throughout the semester.
Yeah. How did you learn about the Collegiate Farm Bureau, Katie?
I actually just kept hearing it from professors in the College of Ag. It's like, this is a way to get involved. And as soon as I heard it, I was like, hey, my brothers were in that. How about I try it too?
Sure. So how's your experience been so far with it?
So far, it's been great. I've had amazing leadership opportunities. I'm currently the vice president. So being able to fill that role and see how it works from the inside out has been really nice.
So I want to ask both of you this, and I'll start off with you, Katie. Tell me, do you know how it started and how things got started with the Collegiate Farm Bureau?
Well, Collegiate Farm Bureau was here way before me, but from what I can tell, it's just a great way for college students to get involved and advocate agriculture into the community, not just on campus.
Right. Dr. Manlove?
Yeah, I mean, kind of echoing what Katie said. So, I mean, I spoke about the Collegiate Farm Bureau, or the Farm Bureau overall for Arkansas. And the way it's organized is there's a national Farm Bureau, and there are the state, and then each county, for the most part, where it has a large agricultural presence, has a local chapter involved. And really one of the main purposes of the collegiate side of it is to allow a pathway from college where you're learning about agriculture, where you're kind of first getting experience in your education, and preparing you to kind of take on a role in your local board, and then hopefully kind of continue to move up through the state level. So it's really to prepare the advocates for the next generation.
And so with that, and I know it's probably much more than just farm work. Is that correct? Kind of tell us about the different tiers or the different areas that students can get involved in this. And I'm going to piggyback and ask you about how you've been getting involved in it. So if you don't mind, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a focus on the farming side, just kind of the background of where it came from. There's also a lot of emphasis on rural development. And that's, I think, a piece that tends to get overlooked, is that there's a correlation between, of course, where we have our farms, mostly in rural areas, and those areas also need a economic or a community development boost, so to speak. So we look at farming, and there's, of course, different topics that will come up different regionally for the farms as well. But we also look at labor issues, and how do we employ the right kind of farmers, and then also just as an overall. One of the things that agriculture's struggled with some is our image to the world, kind of telling everyone what exactly is agriculture. And that's a real big piece of what we do, kind of advocating and educating those that aren't directly involved or not directly on a farm, what it is we actually do and how it kind of impacts their daily life.
So some of the conversations that are had, I would imagine that, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I imagine you're talking about local leaders, maybe mayors, county judges, then going to state legislators, and even maybe national. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So tell us about some of the things, Katie, that you're doing, and that you've, some of the experiences you've had as part of the Collegiate Farm Bureau.
Well, coming into agriculture, you don't see a lot of women. So that's something I really wanted to focus on personally, was being able to be a leader as a woman. And Collegiate Farm Bureau has really opened that opportunity up to me. And just getting to encourage other kids in the College of Agriculture to do the same has been really, really good for me. And it's forced me to believe in myself as well.
Right. It develops confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that you said is, and one of the things also that's kind of a stereotype that I've heard a lot working in farm communities, and that is that there's the mistaken belief that farmers are all male and all that, it's male dominated and that, but I think you're exactly right, Katie. We're having more and more females to be able to get involved in that. Kind of tell us about that aspect and kind of your work as you're trying to be able to get more females involved in farming.
Well, it is true. Women aren't as present in the agriculture industry, but I feel like we also tend to take like the backseat position. So maybe we're just not seen as much as the male are.
Sure.
But we're definitely there, and I feel like the agriculture industry is growing with women every year. And this new freshman group that I've seen this year, I've seen a lot of women that are ag business, and I have really encouraged them to get involved in things like Collegiate Farm Bureau in order to find that presence in the agriculture industry that I have.
And Dr. Manlove, why is that so important?
Absolutely. One of the things that we do in our college is, or I guess kind of our makeup of our college, which surprises most people, is the majority of our students are female. So being able to give them a voice, letting them have experiences, and so again, part of that advocacy is breaking down that stereotypical idea of what it is to be a farmer, and so providing those leadership opportunities and allowing them to grow into those positions is very important.
One of the things I could see where Collegiate Farm Bureau would really be helpful, especially in the state of Arkansas. Here in Northeast Arkansas and in much of Eastern Arkansas, you have typically rice, wheat, soybeans, those are your typical crops, but things may be a lot different in different parts of the state. And I can imagine that right there would probably be a huge way in which the Farm Bureau, the Collegiate Farm Bureau, helps to be able not only to educate about some of the ways that crops are grown here, but also around the state of Arkansas, maybe even around the country too, because everything's different.
Yeah, so I mean, I know we've mentioned quite a bit about my background being in agricultural economics as well as Katie's, but within our college, and Farm Bureau is open to anyone with any background. You don't necessarily have to be in the College of Ag. As long as you have an interest in promoting agriculture, you're welcome. But
Sure.
One thing I want to point out, though, is that a lot of our students are animal science majors. So why we don't necessarily here in Northeast Arkansas see a lot of animal production, our students come from all over the state. They're from everywhere. So being able to kind of connect the students that are going to go back into their hometown, and a lot of it is forming those networks that they can build on, so that Katie, who is from a area where we do crop production, can network and make good connections with someone in the western side of the state that may focus a little bit more on the animal production side.
Yeah, and I could imagine there was benefits on all sides of that.
Yes,
for those networks.
I really came into college knowing nothing about animal science. So being able to be around these people and also gear Collegiate Farm Bureau towards livestock and crop, I've been able to learn a lot about both sides of the whole process.
One of the things I did want to talk about is the work that Arkansas Farm Bureau does with us. I know you said that this is a part of Farm Bureau, and that how does the Arkansas Farm Bureau and maybe even national work with you all by way of maybe either providing support or education or whatever? How does it work with that?
Yeah, so the Farm Bureau in the state of Arkansas is organized into specific regions, and we're in the Northeast region. So with that, we have Tanner Riggins, who is our connection, our main advocacy part for our education side of the piece. They provide funding support. They also provide opportunities for our students to go to conferences, to bring all of the different regions together, and again, really focus on that networking. And there's even opportunities beyond just the state to go to a national conference where one thing I've learned, so I used to live in Texas, was that it was very predominantly animal production focused. And so coming here where we're very crop focused, it's a very different type of student. The behaviors, the culture is very different. And so being exposed to that and having that opportunity, I think adds a lot of value. And so funding for us to do the things that we do, to be able to advocate on the behalf of Farm Bureau is helpful. And then also just providing the correct resources. So pointing us in the right directions of what should our focus really be, where should we spend our energy to really see a difference, to see a change.
Now, for you personally, going from a state where there was animal production primarily to one that's now a crop production state, I know you've learned a lot in that process, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. So I remember kind of thinking from where I was at in Texas, everyone wore cowboy boots and cowboy hats and starched jeans where you couldn't walk in them. So I came here expecting the same thing, thinking it's agriculture, everyone will be basically the same, and the culture is completely different, just about the way you raise crops being a seasonal pattern to when we harvest and when we plant, and then being very different for animal production where you might be involved in something year-round. It's very, very different in the way the culture shapes around those things.
Very good. We'll continue this conversation here on the other side of the break. Assistant Professor of Agricultural Economics, Dr. Jacob Manlove, and also Katie Parker with the Arkansas, or the Collegiate Farm Bureau, is joining us here on A-State Connections on KASU. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll have more coming up on the other side.
ASU-TV, shows like Red Wolf Roundtable, ASU-TV News, Westside Football, and more. Gain real-life experience while doing what you love. Get involved with ASU-TV today.
Here to deliver the latest news on A-State sports, ranging from football, basketball, baseball, and more.
I'm your host, Tristan Harlan, alongside your other host, Cooper Melder.
Red Wolf Roundtable is your local sports source.
Tune in to Red Wolf Roundtable to get your fix on sports talk and news.
At Arkansas State, we want you to go. Go where learning soars, takes flight, and rockets ahead. Go for experiences, internships, and scholarships. We want you to go. Become A-State Maine. Are you ready to go? Go.astate.edu for details.
Live from the ASU-TV studios in the School of Media and Journalism, this is A-State Connections. And welcome back to A-State Connections on KASU and ASU-TV. Joining me today, so glad to have Dr. Jacob Manlove and also Katie Parker, who's joining us here on A-State Connections on KASU as we're continuing to talk about the Collegiate Farm Bureau. So in the last segment, we talked about the importance of having women in agriculture. And Katie, one of the things that we were talking about in the break is a conference that's taking place. Tell us a bit about this, please.
Yes, every spring we host the Women in Agriculture Conference, and we partner with Sigma Alpha in order to make that happen. It's a pretty big deal in the state of Arkansas, I think.
Yeah, so I know that as part of, you mentioned Sigma Alpha, so a little background on Sigma Alpha. They're actually a service sorority that we have within the College of Agriculture for our ladies focusing in agriculture. So again, there's another advocacy group that we have in the college. So the idea of the Women in Agriculture Conference, so when I was actually a master's student working at the University of Arkansas, I had the privilege to work under Dr. Jenny Pop, who was a great mentor of mine. And one of the things that she did was help. There's a Arkansas Women in Agriculture Conference that they hold yearly, usually in Little Rock, that has lots of ladies come in and it's sharing about everything that they're doing. And I know that not all of our students within Jonesboro can necessarily travel to that. We try to send a small representation to be present at the main conference, but I wanted to bring that same experience back and put it in our campus here at Jonesboro. So we did that last year as our first annual event. We're planning on continuing that. And so the real purpose of that is we bring in speakers. So last year we had the Vice President of Human Resources for CGB, which is Consolidated Grain and Barge. And she was able to come in and give her perspective about how she's been able to move up in the ranks as a minority within the agricultural industry sector. And then have a panel where we had a lot of experts, including our education director for Farm Bureau that we have from Arkansas, Jennifer Craig, and a lot of folks just to come in and allow our students to use them as a sounding board to kind of ask questions. What is it that that we need to do? What are the things that we should put ourselves out there? What activities should we be involved in so that we can be successful? And I know it was the Women in Ag Conference, and so of course it was focused on our ladies, but I think it was also very beneficial for the guys that showed up to understand that that they have a role to play in supporting holistically the entire industry as a whole.
Yeah, exactly. Very important for men to be able to show that support as well, because basically everybody's in this together. And that. One of the things, Dr. Manlove, I wanted to ask you about is kind of going back into the classroom a little bit about what you're teaching students and that. I know that obviously agriculture is going through a lot of challenges right now, especially with in agriculture economics and that. What are some of the challenges that that you all are seeing that you're educating students about, maybe how to try to address some of those challenges?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges I see, and as the college we're trying to face this problem head on, is that when you ask people what they think of farming or what they think of agriculture, they think you're out in the field. And that's the extent of what they think the involvement in agriculture is. And it's so much more than that. There's agricultural lending. There's real estate that goes along with agriculture. And there's even, within our college, we have a huge, there's been a big push for what we call precision agriculture. So that's using drones to fly over fields and take infrared data about where's the dry spot, where's not the dry spot, so that we can more accurately apply fertilizers, we can more accurately water our fields without wasting and being good stewards to the environment. So being able to push that agenda, being able to make people understand that agriculture goes beyond just what we're doing in the field, what we're actually planning, and that there's a large piece of technology and STEM also kind of focused and embedded real deeply within agriculture.
And I can only imagine the research projects you all have probably going on right now about some of those things.
Oh, absolutely. I know that especially within our drone program. One of the really interesting opportunities we have is that our students are actually able to take a class, and at the end of the course, they have their drone license, so that they can go out and actually do these things on their own. And some of the research we're doing is, focusing on seeing what is the perception of not just people who have come from an ag background. So personally, I don't come from an agricultural background. I didn't grow up on a farm. I found agriculture kind of haphazardly into graduate school and kind of fell in love with it from there. But being able to reach not just our ag students and researching why would somebody like me be interested in agriculture? How do we reach those folks that aren't raised on a farm to be a part of this and see that there's so much more out there than just what people tend to think.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating that, unlike Katie, you came from a farming family, that you did not come from one, and here you are teaching. Yeah. But that's awesome. That's fantastic. That's a great story. One of the things, Katie, I wanted to ask you about is in your studies, what are some of the things that you've just been absolutely interested in, maybe kind of an area of research, whatever, that you would really like to go into with farming?
Well, my plan is to become a loan officer and go into ag lending, and that's not really something I knew that was an option until my senior year of high school, but I'm currently in Dr. Manlove's commodity futures class, and it is a lot more interesting than I ever expected. We've been trading on the futures market, and we had Hurley and Associates come talk to us last week, and it's a grain consultant company, and they basically make all those futures markets decisions for companies. And that's something that I found really, really interesting that I never expected to.
That you could do something like that, or you could go there and do that, or ag lending and that. So I know you're really excited about that part of it. That's fantastic. So what are the ways, Dr. Manlove, that the department that you are working in are going out into the community, helping out, kind of making those connections with Arkansas, through Arkansas State, being able to try to serve the communities?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is a couple of weekends ago we had the Bill and Alice Nix Petting Zoo. And the real purpose of that is it kind of corresponds to when we had some babies on the farm. We had some piglets, some goats, lambs. We had a little bit of everything that we have on the farm, and it allows the folks in Jonesboro that aren't directly involved with agriculture to come out and get a very hands-on experience. And so as part of that, we had the petting zoo area, but we also did we're very fortunate here at Arkansas State to have a working farm on campus. And so with that working farm, it serves as probably the largest lab we have on campus, like to hundreds of acres large, and it's a very good place that students can come get hands-on experience. And so we were able to show the community what it is we actually do out there, what research is taking place, and so being able to show them just beyond, we drew them in with the petting zoo, and then put them on a tractor and toured them around the farm to really explain what it is that we actually do out here. Lots of people drive by it every day, but most people don't really understand what's going on out there.
Yeah. Well, one thing I know a lot of people are starting to talk about is what's going on with the farmers market. And the building that's going on, that's going to be a lot of fun here pretty soon when that opens up.
Absolutely.
So very good. Well, we really appreciate you both coming in. And before we let you run, I want to go back to the Collegiate Farm Bureau. For people who are just joining us, if people want more information about the Collegiate Farm Bureau, Katie, what do they need to do?
Collegiate Farm Bureau is advertised all over the College of Ag, but if you are not in the college, then we also have a Facebook page and an Instagram. We're pretty active and we keep it pretty updated. We have some events coming up. We're doing a pumpkin pass out this Friday at a local elementary school. We're going to give a bunch of first graders pumpkins to paint and teach them about the growth cycle. So that's just one way we're advocating agriculture into the community.
Fantastic. That's great. Just in time for Halloween. That's fantastic. Other things you may want to add here, Dr. Manlove?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a ton of events scheduled for this semester. And again, I want to reiterate that if you have any interest at all in Collegiate Farm Bureau, you don't have to be an ag student. You don't have to be from an ag background to be a part of our organization. We welcome everyone. And we have a lot of folks that aren't necessarily within agriculture. They just grew up in agriculture and they kind of have an interest in it, or their parents were involved and they want to be involved. So definitely don't let that be a hindrance to wanting to join. Like Katie said, we've got events coming up. We're going to the state capitol. We're going to meet with some legislators and kind of talk about what their policies are. So even if you have an interest in politics, it'd be a great way to kind of get involved. So we cover a wide range of topics within our club.
Dr. Manlove, thank you for joining us here today. Katie, thank you for joining us as well. Anything else you'd like to add, please?
I think that's it. Thank you for having us.
All right, very good. Well, we appreciate both of you for being with us here today on A-State Connections. That's Assistant Professor of Agricultural Economics, Dr. Jacob Manlove, and Katie Parker with A-State Collegiate Farm Bureau, who've been joining me on A-State Connections on KASU. Thanks for joining us today. As always, I want to thank the instructor of creative media production, Galen Perkins, and his amazing students who are always running the show behind the scenes. Also want to thank ASU-TV engineers Caleb Herring and also Colton Holderfield for their help. And also want to thank you for watching the show today as well. Just a reminder, you can listen to A-State Connections, the radio show, Saturday mornings at 11 on KASU. As always, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time, and so long, everyone.